Hi.
Guess we're live.
Hey, Facebook world. I'm here today with my partner, Christoper Arnold, and I invited him to join me in answering a question that I received from a fan, a follower on my Facebook page. And I wanted to get his masculine perspective and just have a fuller answer to this question that I think is really valuable. And also, in Christoper's work, he deals a lot with conflict on a big level, with
executive teams and corporations. Yeah.
So, hey Heather, so you just joined us. I'm feeling a little awkward. The Facebook Lives are always hard for me, and then it feels like an extra stretch to have Christoper here and to be answering a question. So this is what I look like when I'm awkward and nervous. So the question, as it was written, says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on working with a loved one who doesn't see or claims not to see the communication issues between you and them. Without trying to change or control them, how does one work to improve the communication? And I was so grateful for this question because this is a dynamic that I see so much with the couples that I work with. Oftentimes it's the woman in the relationship who just craves for deeper connection and deeper intimacy and really wants to talk through things. And, the masculine often has some more walls and resistance to that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, that's certainly our experience. So we're going to talk about it that way because that's the experience that we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had this in our own relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for me, and this is one thing actually that I learned from you, and it's sort of a combination of something that I've known for a long time, but also having a different perspective on it, which is whenever we have something dear to us that we want to share with our partner, even if it's a highly emotional or painful experience, it's always good to share our intention about why we're bringing it. And Christoper has also illuminated to me the importance of sharing if we have fear about bringing it and what that fear might be. You want to say a little bit about that?
No. No, keep going.
Okay.
I like where you're going.
Okay. So essentially it sounds something like this. I have something that I want to talk to you about, and I notice that I have a lot of fear bringing it to you. I'm afraid that this might cause distance between us. I'm afraid that you might be angry at me for bringing this to you, but my hope is that in talking about this, we feel closer together for having had this conversation. So kind of just making it explicit, everything that you're bringing, everything that you're feeling about the thing that you're about to talk about before you even say what it is. And I find that when we do this, when we have the awareness to actually do this, the person who's the receiver of the information, their walls tend to come down. More curiosity is present because they know, this person really wants to feel closer to me. And that's what this is in service of.
Yeah, as I hear you say that, I notice I'm open and receptive to whatever you're about to say. So it works for me. I also heard you say in there that it takes self-awareness to be able to start that way and to know yourself and what's really going on and what is your why for bringing this up. And so that can take a piece of work just to get the conversation started.
Yeah. The thing that I think is really important to acknowledge about talking about more challenging aspects of a relationship dynamic is that if I'm the giver of the information, I believe it's my responsibility to really know what's happening inside of me and to know what's mine and to be able to speak on behalf of the deeper aspect of my reality. And maybe that's possible or not, but it's still there. There's still a deeper cut of what's happening inside of me. And so that self-curiosity is so important. But for me, just the way that I'm conditioned and shaped, I have so much fear about being vulnerable, about speaking my truth, especially in intimate interactions. And so not only am I needing to like stretch myself beyond my conditioned self and really work to be bigger in the world and like feel my fear and feel my courage, then if I'm met with a wall, I'm also needing to have some sense of curiosity and awareness that, okay, my partner also has a conditioned self and we're kind of like butting heads or meeting, like hooking each other in some way. And to me, this is the most important part of the communication, because if we identify with these conditioned parts and if we believe them and interact from them and their impulses, then we go down a rabbit hole and we do feel further apart, even if the intention was to feel closer together for having brought it.
Yeah, and I think what's coming up for me is, and I'm still focusing on the person bringing the topic up in the first place, but I think if I'm on the receiving end, what might be happening for me if my defenses come up, it might be, well, what does she want from me? What is this, just a conversation? Does she want me to change? Does she want to, and being in the masculine side, I'm probably right away going to, she wants to fix something, she wants to change something, and I'm worried about what she's going to ask me for, and can I do that? So all these fears might be coming up inside of me. And so is there something that you would suggest for maybe helping to keep that at bay, maybe setting context around the conversation?
I don't know about keeping it at bay, but I love that you're bringing it up, because if I'm wanting to actually feel closer to you and not change or control you, and I see we do have a question from Heather, I'll answer in a moment. But if I'm genuinely, like the questioner asked, if I'm genuinely bringing this to you because I want connection, not that I want you to change in any way, I just want us to have a deeper connection, then if I'm met with that, like with that wall in any way, I actually believe that it's also my job to kind of snuggle up to the wall, because that's part of the connection. Like that's the moment of our connection, because that's what's in the field between us. And that can be a little sticky or tricky if we're feeling really emotional and charged about the thing that we're bringing. To recognize, okay, his wall actually isn't about me. There's just something up inside of him. And maybe that wall needs a little love, or if I could just make it explicit, like you seem, and be curious about it rather than angry about it and wanting the wall to just disappear so that we can have the connection.
Yeah. Snuggling up to the wall is something that I've been working on for us. And I guess I've had some thoughts about that. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. I think the wall often shows up as fear and maybe even a little bit of anger. It can often show up that way. And so when people maybe, when I start to perceive fear or anger, slowing down, maybe pausing, calling attention to it, and getting curious about what's behind that, because usually there's hurt or fear or something more tender behind that wall that is trying to be protected.
Yeah, the soft underbelly underneath the spikes.
Yeah. And so I think if you can see a phrase that I've been using recently is seeing the wall, or seeing the anger as kind of a paper dragon, where it looks really threatening, but realizing that it's not very thick, even though it is spiky and it's meant to keep you away. That if you can snuggle up to it and be gentle with it, you can get to back to that softness underneath.
Yeah, for me, it really comes back to remembering that we're on the same team. Like, we love each other, and this is here in the field. And so how are we going to be together even when this arises? How are we going to do this dance and not do the conditioned thing, which is often, as this questioner had asked, which often like has us feel further apart, pretend like everything's okay, and just move on because we can. We can just easily move on. But the more we move on past these things, the more the wall builds between us and our and our. I see that, Heather. Thank you. Yeah, snuggling up to the wall is really sweet. But if we don't actually talk about the thing that's between us, getting back to the place of connection takes like a lot of undoing and untangling and therapy, right? To actually go back in time. And so I am committed in our relationship to speak about what arises as I can, you know, as in the present moment as I'm able. Sometimes that isn't until a day or two later, but if it's alive inside of me and if it keeps coming up, to me that warrants bringing it, because otherwise I'll just be holding it and it's between us, and that's on me. That's me getting in the way of our connection, even if I'm the one who wants the connection.
I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit to something that's been calling my attention in the question.
Yeah.
The questioner said that my partner claims to not see a problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I've just been sitting with that and this idea of like, well, I don't see a problem, so it must be your problem. And thinking about the impact that must have on that person who's saying, yes, I do have a problem, but rather than just pretending, or it feels like they're pretending, but maybe they really don't see it. But then what's missing there is the curiosity. Like, okay, I don't see a problem, but like, you do. And so it's important for me to get curious about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And just because I don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And recognizing that my partner's bringing this to my attention out of love. And I may have fear around that, and I may have hurt in the past about people blaming me for things, but really getting back to why we're doing this together, which is to find love and connection, and to remind myself of that, that this isn't about just to attack me, even if I've experienced that in the past.
So in a moment, I want to get to the how,
Okay.
like the how, if I'm the one who wants the connection and I don't want to control. Like I already shared the how to set it up, but I just want to get back to Heather's question for a moment. She had asked, is there a lighter way to bring this? Like maybe there was something in the way that I expressed it that it sounded like heavy or really charged. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the first couple times might be a little heavy. I think if you can get a little bit into it and get to that point where it's like, where you can just name the pattern that's happening, then I think you can come back to it in a lighter way and say, oh, here we're doing that thing again, that thing that we do, ha ha, look at us, ha ha. But I'm not sure the first time how light I would be able to be. So I'd be curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, so for me, when talking about something like this, it's important that we are making it explicit and we're setting context about what the conversation is actually about. And that's why the setup to me is so valuable. So when I'm being really clear about what my fear is, what I'm wanting, and then the next step really is getting consent. Like, are you available for this? Do you want to hear this? Then we can actually have the conversation. And I believe that it often just takes so much effort to even get to the place to know, what am I afraid of? Like, why am I afraid to bring this to this person? This is my partner, and I have something that I want to share, and I want to feel closer together, and this thing inside of me is really big. Typically, I believe that when there's fear, there's a younger part that feels responsible to make everybody else happy, or feels responsible to hide their truth, to keep a sense of balance and harmony. And there also might be past evidence that my partner can't handle my truth. And when I hear this, because I do hear this piece a lot, I get curious, well, how did you say it? Sometimes we think when we're speaking our truth, we're just like, saying everything that's on our mind. And our truth is never about anyone else. Our truth is always about us. I believe it's always about the less obvious thing inside of us. And it always feels vulnerable to share it. If I don't feel vulnerable and tender and like exposed when I share it, we were talking about this earlier on a walk. I mean, for me, if I'm sharing something like that, I typically just feel naked, like so exposed, and that's how you know you're speaking your truth. So.
We could do a whole Facebook Live just on the truth. What does that mean, right? So, I think the other thing I noticed, though, at the beginning of this Facebook Live is you made light of it, of yourself. You kind of were talking about what was going on inside of you, and you were vulnerable, and you were light about it, and you invited other people in. So I think maybe that's another tactic around making it light is don't try to make it light for the other person, but maybe be light with yourself about what's going on for you and how funny it is to be human and to have these things going on.
To me, the most important part is that we're authentic. A principle that I hold in myself, in my relationship, in my practice with my clients as a mother is welcome everything. I believe it's the most rigorous spiritual practice. How can I welcome everything? And that does not mean that I'm okay with everything. It means that whatever's here inside of me, I have the capacity to welcome it. And once I'm able to do that for myself, I'm able to do it for you, just like with the wall. And so the different layers that are inside of me, like if I genuinely have lightness about it, then that's the place that I come from. But if I genuinely have fear and if I genuinely have this desire to feel closer, that's the place that I presence it from.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I'm hearing there too is maybe that desire to have lightness is really fear that this is going to be big and heavy. And so rather than trying to make it light, it might be better to just claim the fear and the desire for it to not go to a certain place.
Heather just said it's funny to be human. So perhaps welcoming the authentic and the humanness. Yeah, and it can also feel really awkward. Like I think almost like 90% of the time it feels awkward. I see people who've been married for 20 years in my office and they still feel awkward presencing their truth with their partner. And I think it's like kind of just like squirming beyond the conditioned self and like growing past it each time. It can feel like crawling at first and like wearing new skin, and it's a journey and it's a process and it's clumsy. It's been clumsy for me and it's still clumsy for me, and that I think is part of the funniness of it all, like if we can find the humor in that.
So I noticed the time.
Okay.
Maybe we should get into the how a little bit.
Okay, let's get into the how. What are you noticing? How are you feeling right now?
I feel good.
How do you know you feel good?
Because I felt comfortable calling out the context of time and moving us forward. And yeah, I notice sometimes I have trouble looking at myself and hearing you at the same time, so I'm managing that. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm feeling this lightness in my heart, this sort of like bubbly energy right here. And I'm feeling tall in my chair, while also feeling like solid in my seat.
I know you wanted me to come up with some sensations, but you're better at that than I am. This is still a work in progress for me too, so.
It seems like you have a story like you did something wrong.
Nah. Maybe. Not that I did it wrong, but I could always do it better, right?
Yeah. It seems like you're blushing a little bit, like you want me to stop looking at you. The reason why I asked Christoper that is because revealing what's happening inside of us is the path to connection. So no matter what happens after we set context for what we're wanting, like maybe there's a wall, maybe there's this curiosity, the next step is always the same in my world. The next step is always having an eye on the inside and vulnerably sharing what's happening inside of me. And if I get to the step of actually like going back in time and saying, you know, when this thing happened, this objective thing happened, I felt this, and this deeper part of me, I had this pain or this story about you. And if I can really talk about myself and own my experience in this way, and let's just say my partner isn't interested in hearing, I still believe it's my job to just reveal and say, well, hearing that, I feel lonely, or I feel distant from you. And then they say something else, and maybe it's still part of the wall or the condition that they don't want to talk about it. And like, now I'm noticing that I feel really frustrated and I have such desire to feel closer to you. And I just keep revealing, you know? And then maybe I eventually get to the place of feeling hopeless, and I reveal that too. And that is the way to create the connection, to just the next thing that's there, to keep revealing it and owning it as mine. Nobody makes me feel anything. It's not, when you do that, you make me so mad, or I feel like you're such a ... It's not like that at all. I feel like you don't care about me. That's not a feeling, right? That's about the other person. So the reveal is always about me. Always. It takes so much self-awareness and so much practice. And every time I do a Facebook Live, I remind you all, I have my online practice groups every Monday at 6:30 on Zoom, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, because I believe wholeheartedly that practicing with a group that isn't one-on-one, high stakes with my intimate partner, I develop the artistry, I develop the inner eye, I find the language, I experience different flavors of myself with different people. And then when the moment happens, it's like I've gone to the gym and now I can do the heavy lifting.
And when someone is able to reveal and does it well, it's a vulnerable thing, and it can be really scary to listen and to hear it.
Say more about that?
Yeah, because I think when someone just shows true vulnerability, it has an impact of me accessing my vulnerability. And often if I have walls or I'm not receptive, I'm avoiding that. I'm uncomfortable with vulnerability. And so even just revealing and even just being vulnerable can be scary for others.
The thing that I think that you're pointing to is that our relationships are a mirror for us to see ourselves more clearly. And the practice of revealing keeps the relationship so clean that we're not getting entangled, so we're in our delusions anymore. It's actually a really beautiful mirror. Oh, this is happening in my partner. Bam, I get to see that in myself. And even if I keep trying not to, if my partner is able to keep revealing, it's just like, okay, there's the mirror again. Okay, there's the mirror again.
And I guess I want to speak to that a little bit. I mean, if you're playing the masculine role in your relationship, or you have those walls, or you're a little closed off and you're having trouble and you don't see the problem, I think what I want to say is, even when you have good intentions and even when you want things to just be calm and easy, and you're coming from a good place in your heart, it's important for you to know that you impact people. And no matter whether you wanted to or not, the way you show up, the words you speak, the actions that you take, even keeping silent, it impacts people around you. And it may impact them in a way that you didn't intend. And so when someone shares with you the impact that you've had on them, it's not to make you wrong, and it's not to say that you had a bad intention or you wanted to do something bad. It's just that they want you to know something about yourself that maybe you weren't aware of. And can you be curious about that? And can you listen to them and listen to the impact that you might have had? Because there might be something for you to learn about yourself and all of that.
I felt impacted by that.
I could feel that.
When you presenced it, I felt my heart.
Yeah.
And I felt all sparkly eyes towards you.
I think that's shown up a lot in our relationship. I mean, coming into your family, you have 2 children, and me not having a lot of experience with that, I don't know fully what impact I have on you and the kids and the house and the energy in the house. And when I avoid certain conversations, I'm not always aware of the impact I'm having. And so it's been something that I've had to learn, is that, I do have an impact. It's okay for people to be impacted by me. It's okay for that impact to not be what I thought it should be. I don't need to control that.
And it doesn't mean you're not lovable.
That's right. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think if there are any other points that I want to make.
Well, I think the last thing, I kind of had an analogy worked up in my head a little bit that I wanted to share, and that is just, I think there's a temptation to sometimes sweep things under the rug and just say, do we really have to talk about this? Do we really have to go into this again? Do we really have to get into the conflict or the difficulties of our relationship? And what I would say is, I was thinking about the analogy of an automobile, a car, and it's like, if you see an oil leak, you know, you can like every few hundred miles, you can add oil to the car and you can pretend that there's not a problem. It still drives, but eventually there's a problem in your car and it's going to blow up in your face. And so
It's a good one.
yeah, you may think that that sweeping things under the rug and just ignoring them. I mean, you can survive that way for a long time, maybe 30 years, but eventually it's your relationship, it's going to come up and it's going to need to be dealt with, and you're going to have to get under the hood of your relationship. And when you do that, when we work through the difficulties, it brings us closer together. And so the other disadvantage of sweeping things under the rug is you miss out on that opportunity for real true closeness. Yeah.
Something that we've often said together, which is we have a strong belief that it's not about an absence of conflict that creates a healthy relationship. It's about how we meet that conflict. Like, how are we going to be together? And that was one of the ways that I knew that we can do this, is that we both have a value for that. And I think part of the thing that this question was getting to is that sometimes one person has that value and the other person doesn't. And so then what do we do? And to me, it's, if I am really clean and I keep revealing, I get more in touch with my truth. And so I know my truth more and more as I go along. I believe that part of being a sovereign, autonomous human being is that here I am, solid in myself, in my alignment, also impacted by you and affecting you and doing this dance of relationship. And I really need to trust myself to land on my own 2 feet if I keep bringing this vulnerable thing and you can't meet me there. Like, I need to really get clear and true with myself about what that means for me and what I really do value and what I want in this world. So
Yeah, we could keep going for on and on and on and on.
yeah, I'm so grateful to everybody who joined us. I saw Rachel and Sherilyn and Heather, and as always, if you have any questions for me or for us or for Christoper, just send me a private message or write a comment here, and just like this one, we can incorporate it in future Facebook Lives. So wishing you deep connection and healthy love.
Thank you, and thank you.
Bye.